This is Tips from the Top Floor, episode 912 for early-ish August 2022.
Tips from the top floor. Tips from the top, all right, from the top floor.
Hey, hello, and welcome. I'm back. It is, well, I'm in scramble mode. And that is because I am planning to do I'm preparing the Eastern European Photo Road Trip Scouting Tour. Try that for an acronym. Anyway, so I'll leave in a few days to southern Germany to meet Andres, who early listeners of Tips from the Top Floor might remember. He's the guy who made the logo and some other artwork. And he's in Germany, so I'll spend a couple of days with him and his family, and then I will take off straight over to Prague and do some photo exploration there, and then go to Budapest and do some photo exploration there, and I will report back from there. I'm gonna do some vlogging. Yes, I think I'm too old to be a vlogger, but hey, let's try this thing. So I've started a few videos already. I've posted them on YouTube. You can go to tfttf.com/scout, tfttf.com/scout. So on this episode, I want to talk about four things. SD recovery, that's like data rescue, exoplanets, as a photography relation there, the locksmith's paradox, a big photo connection there, and the stock problem. So let's kick this off with the SD recovery thing. This came across my timeline on Twitter just a few weeks ago, and I found this, I love looks behind the scenes, and this is a look behind the scene. This is a short video of someone rescuing images from an SD card. So you have a camera, you have an SD card, your memory card, breaks for some reason. You can't read from it anymore. And you've been, you've just taken pictures of the aliens landing on Earth, and it's the most important pictures you've ever taken, and they are gone. So what do? Card is broken, camera can't read it, your computer can't read it. Everything is in bad shape. So if you just accidentally formatted the card, there's ways to fix that with software. If you have a corrupted file system because you, pulled the card out of the camera while it was still writing to it, tip, the 2-second rule. Try to use that one before you pull the card out. Wait 2 seconds. That can often be fixed with software, but then you have hardware defects. An SD card is hardware, and there is always the possibility of something breaking, even if it's exceedingly rare. But in that case, it looks like the card has a broken controller. That's the thing that on your memory card that sits between the camera and the actual flash memory, or between your card reader and the actual flash memory. Something to access the flash memory in a structured way. So this video shows how they access the memory directly, the memory chips directly. And it's just fun to see how they start off with lasering off the outside of the chip, and that exposes the traces, and then they have this contraption with looks like spider legs of something. They tap directly into the context of the memory chips, and then some software that then pretty much plays the role of the controller, and that reads the bits from the memory, and then there's another piece of software that decodes the files. And now I do have a better idea of why some of the data recovery in some cases can be really expensive. So there we go, data recovery. I never knew that's how they did it. Next topic. And, I'm a space nerd, so this is right down my alley. And a space nerd, and especially a space telescope nerd like James Webb, I'm all over that. And that's not just because of space, but because of photography. There's amazing cameras in there. And they are called telescopes, but in the end, there is a digital sensor that captures that data. So a telescope is just a digital camera with a really good lens in front of it, pretty much. Now, one of the things that James Webb does is, or what its mission is among other things, is finding exoplanets. And exoplanets are the planets that revolve around a star somewhere that is not our sun. And the methods to use those, like we're talking finding a planet that circles around a star that is millions or even billions of light years away. And then that planet circling might be in a habitable zone and might be a good candidate for a potential of life in the universe other than on Earth. So they're using like several different methods. And I recently listened to a German podcast on that, and I found this really interesting. So first of all, first method to find a planet around another sun is very simple. It's called direct imaging. Like you can see it rotating around the sun. And I believe that has been done a few times, but the resolution is typically not enough to really see those planets. So you have to use indirect methods. And the first indirect method is they call the transit method. They just look at the brightness of that sun, of that star, and then when it when a planet crosses in front of it, then the light gets dimmer. I mean, minutely dimmer, just a tiny little bit dimmer, but enough that you can, if it's regular, you can deduct that is possibly a planet. So that is one method. The other method is, okay, and this only works if the orbit of the planet goes towards us and away from us. Like if you're looking at straight on the edge of the orbit. If the orbit is so that you see the entire orbit, then it will never transit in front of the star. And that's when another method gets interesting, and that's what they call the wobble method. I love the name, the wobble method, because that star moves a bit. Like a planet orbiting around, or one body orbiting around another body, they will both move. Now, Earth around the sun, yes, the Earth influences the sun. The sun moves a little bit. Very small amounts, but enough to be measurable. So the same is true with planets and stars somewhere out there. So you can notice some sideways motion of that star. It can be seen wobbling just slightly, and depending on the frequency, on the period of the planet going around it, that is something that you can record. And again, it requires quite sensitive optics, but in some cases that is how it's done. And then last but not least, I'm pretty sure it's not the only method, the only 4 methods there, but the last one I found even more interesting. You know the Doppler effect, like if an ambulance drives past you and the siren goes up in volume when it approaches you and goes down in, not in volume, in pitch, and down in pitch when it goes away from you. The same happens to light. And if you have a light receding away from you, you get what's called redshift. So it moves away. If something moves towards you, you get blue shift. And if you have an orbit, a planet orbiting a sun, and it's coming towards you and moving away from you, that sun, just a little bit, based on the size and the weight and so on the mass of the planet, that will slightly red or blue shift the light from that star. So you have a minute shift in spectrum because of the movement of the star based on the planet dragging it away and towards you. So they have, James Webb has really, really good infrared spectrometers on board, or one instrument specifically that is made to detect these kind of things. So we will sooner or later find a lot more exoplanets because of those abilities. Yeah, space and telescopes. It's just amazing. All right. The title of this episode, The Locksmith's Paradox. This is one of those things. When I read it, I immediately had the connection to photography. And this is an article by Carolyn Gowan, and I'll link that in the show notes. And she writes about Dan Ariely, who's a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University. And Dan came across this paradox when attending a concert where he got to chat with a guy, and that guy happened to be a locksmith. And the locksmith explained to Dan that when he first started out working as an apprentice locksmith, it would take him quite a while to pick a lock, and it would often be a destructive process. The clients had to pay him, but also pay for a new lock. And despite his inexperience, the clients apparently never complained about how much he charged, and then he normally got like a good tip in addition to his fees. And but that changed because as the locksmith became a bit more experienced in his craft, and he was able to not only like pick the locks quickly, but also do so without breaking the locks, he got a lot more complaints and a lot less tips. And it seemed that people often value the work you do based on the amount of time it takes, rather than valuing like your expertise and your years of experience that someone might bring to their job. And that's an interesting concept, isn't it? I mean, apply that to your own job or to your own to your photography. If you have 30 years of photography under your belt, and it's easy for you to gauge a situation, gauge the light, gauge the surroundings, place your subject somewhere, get the job done with a medium, halfway professional camera, doesn't even have to be the top of the line. The better you are, the less effort you will have to put in your job, or it will feel effortless to the viewer, to the outside spectator. And your tools will become less important in the process too, because as an experienced photographer, you'll shoot with almost any camera and get good results. You'll be confident doing it, and you will get a decent result in a short time. But your client doesn't have that experience. They don't know what it took to get to that point. So they only see the outside appearance. They see the size of your camera. If it's, I don't know, if you remember the Digital Rebel by Canon, if it's silver or black, how professional that looks. They see how long your work takes, how much gear you haul around, how many flashes and umbrellas and things you set up. And that is apparently how clients gauge the value that you provide as a photographer. So here's my question to you. Does that mean that for you as a photographer, if you're really good and experienced, should you, when working for a client, should you pretend to take longer? Should you put on a show? Should you perform theatrics for your client? Or is that what you're doing? Or how do you deal with this issue? Because it is a real issue. It is something that exists, and I don't have a good solution. So if you want to chime in, send a voicemail, write. You can find ways to get your voice on the show at tfttf.com/hi. That's tfttf.com/hi. All right. Last little thing. This is probably a topic in itself, but I decided to put it in here. And it has to do with the problem of well, it's a problem that we all see today in social media, and it has to do with judging things by their first appearance. And of course, I mean, someone writes an article, and that article has a headline. That headline gets posted, and I'd say the majority of people never get over the headline. You rarely find someone who really reads the entire article and gets their own opinion. And of course, publications use that to their advantage, because the more outrageous a headline, the more likely it is to get clicks. And clicks are the thing that is being optimized for. That's what counts, because the publications will get money from advertisers based on how often their articles are clicked, and so on. So it's a bit of a wrong incentive system, but this is the way it exists today. And so far, I was mostly. By the way, that even extends into the people writing the articles are not the same people who make the headlines. Those headlines are, depending on the publication, but more often than not, are written by people who are measured on the amount of clicks that an article gets. So sometimes you end up with like the picture, the headline showing exactly the opposite of what the article actually says. So anyway, that was a problem, or that is a problem. Don't judge a book by its cover is even more important now. But that I've seen lately extend even more into the photography that goes with an article. That's what I call the stock problem, because often what you see, and especially the posts that, well, the articles get represented on social media by some meta information. So when you write an article on be it Wikipedia or any other content management system, you not only have the article and the headline and an image that goes with it, you also have the social media description, sometimes based on the platform. So you might be writing another description for Twitter than you write for Facebook. You have social media photos. And again, those can be multiple photos that will automatically be pulled and displayed by Twitter, Facebook, and so on when someone posts a link to the article. So there's this meta information in there. And sometimes those photos even are not the same photos that are in the article. How often have you followed a link because it has an interesting photo, or one of those clickbaity photos with like a red circle on it and an arrow or something, and you click on that, and then the entire article does not even have that photo in it? That's why. So that leads to, and that is part of the clickbait strategy. So that leads to issues. That leads to issues because the presence of that article on social media is contradictory sometimes to the actual article and the actual imagery there. It's just designed to make you click. So, I find that a bit disconcerting. What does that do to us and to our discourse? So, yeah. Oh, by the way, those headlines are not just written by people. Some are even written by AIs, and there's A/B testing to figure out which of the 2-3 candidates for headlines are the ones that get the most clicks. And then it's an interesting thing, and the imagery plays an important role, probably a more important role than the headline itself. So, yeah. Anyway. Anyway, that was it for this episode of Tips from the Top Floor. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being subscribed. You can, of course, leave feedback for the show at tfttf.com/hi, tfttf.com/hi, and that includes writing, recording a voicemail, or attaching a file for me, tfttf.com/hi. And the following listeners have done exactly that. Well, first of all, Mike has sent us this.
Hey Chris, Mike here from Indiana. So glad to hear your voice after so long being away. I completely understand why you took a leave of absence, and I'm happy, again, like I said, to see you back. I'm sure many others are as well. As for the topics you're going to talk about in the future, I think that's awesome. I have too love photography and space and AI and all things technology, so photography definitely has shifted into a more technology focused than compared to just plain old film. So happy to see it. Looking forward to everything you're talking about. And maybe someday I'll be able to see you on a photo tour. Hopefully in the US, so I don't have to travel so far. But I always love coming overseas. Been to Germany and Austria before and had a great time there. So someday I'll raise a beer and say cheers in person. Talk soon. Bye.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for your feedback. Yeah, I'm really glad that people notice that I'm back. That's still my biggest fear. And then Larry wrote in, and he wrote, in your discussion with John Miller, you both note that a photograph cannot capture the sense of a place. That is nothing to despair about or a limitation of technology. It is something to cherish. Consider the following 3 points. First, if a picture could capture the sense of a place, we would never have to get out of bed in the morning, but could just look at a pile of pictures. Instead, we are motivated to get out into the world and experience each day. Second, when we make a picture, we are making something completely new using some of the raw materials that nature provides. That is the nature of art, creating rather than copying. I have landscapes taken at locations visited by thousands of people a year. Those people would be surprised to see what I have been able to see and capture in a scene that they simply walk past. And third, painters have dealt with the problem of capturing the sense of a place longer than photographers, and many have succeeded. A favorite of mine is the Luncheon of the Boating Party by Renoir. The Luncheon of the Boating Party by Renoir. The picture captures the sense of time and place and atmosphere better than any photograph could. Thanks for the podcast. Larry, thank you so much for your input. Yep, that makes perfect sense to me, and I hope it makes as much sense to everyone else who's listening. And yeah, that was it for the feedback. Thank you so much. And if you want to leave your own feedback, go to tfttf.com/hi. You can, of course, follow Tips from the Top Floor on Twitter at tfttfphoto. And if you can, please support the show at Patreon. Your continued support makes a huge difference. That is tfttf.com/Patreon. tfttf.com/Patreon. All right, coming to the end of the show. Go out and take amazing photos. Be extra nice to each other. And of course, happy shooting.